All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about NFTs in gaming and what that actually means here. So, first off, we need to look at what NFTs are actually built on. So, NFTs stands for non-fungible tokens, and these tokens are built on top of the blockchain, well, a blockchain. So a blockchain is basically just a distributed database that is shared among a bunch of different computers. I think Ethereum has like 6,000 something nodes that are processing transactions. And I had a whole thing about like the different like hash rates and all the different consensus protocols and whatnot, but none of that actually matters too much. All you really need to know is that a blockchain is just a distributed database that is immutable once it gets processed. So there are a couple of consensus protocols that we do need to talk about a little bit here. And that is proof of work, proof of stake, and proof of authority. So since this database is distributed, you need a way to come to a consensus on what is actually part of that database and what is not. So with proof of work is what Bitcoin and currently Ethereum is using. And that is where you use a cryptographically hard algorithm to prove that you are, doing the work that the blockchain is actually authenticated. With proof of stake, instead of doing actual like CPU or GPU work, you are staking actual cryptocurrency as your proof of your involvement in the network. With proof of authority, that is basically you are chosen by whoever is running the network. And those chosen people are the only ones with the authority to prove transactions on the blockchain. We'll get into a little bit of the pros and cons of these right now, actually. So Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, and it was created upon a proof of work algorithm. But this is hugely wasteful in hardware and in electricity. So your block size for the Bitcoin blockchain is limited to 1 megabyte. And the average creation time is actually tuned to be about 10 minutes. So the more miners you have on the Bitcoin chain, the longer and harder that cryptographic puzzle actually becomes. So they want to keep it towards about 10 minutes. So this averages out to be about 7 transactions per second when you are making a transaction on the Bitcoin network. The average transaction takes about 40 minutes to be processed. And to change any of those values, that requires a hard fork of the actual chain software to actually change, which has been done a couple of times. This is why you see like Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and the different flavors of Bitcoin. Those are all results of hard forks when the miners, node operators could not come to an agreement on how best to go forward. So a few years after Bitcoin released, Ethereum came about. And this right now is also based off of a proof of work consensus, but the transactions per second for Ethereum are a lot higher, about 30 transactions per second. The other thing that Ethereum brings to the table is what is called the Ethereum virtual machine. So Bitcoin could only process transactions, so moving coins from one wallet to another, and that's basically it. It's just a currency that goes back and forth. With the Ethereum virtual machine, instead of transactions going back and forth, you actually have a state machine of a like distributed computer system that is getting manipulated. So you have what's called smart contracts that are run on top of this virtual machine. And these smart contracts are basically little programs that run on the network that get executed whenever a transaction gets sent. Those are done through smart contracts. So since this virtual machine is like a Turing complete system, how do you keep a smart contract from, creating an infinite loop or some crazy person like porting Doom to it, which I'm sure someone has tried? The actual running of the machine is actually gated by what they call gas. And for each like transaction, or I guess not a transaction, but I guess operation, because your smart contracts get compiled down into bytecode, which is basically assembly language. And for each process that takes place is a certain gas price for those for each of those operations on the stack. So as those operations get more complex, they use up more gas. So if you end up with an infinite loop, you will end up with infinite gas prices. And since no one can actually afford an infinite gas price, those transactions automatically fail. So, and the fees and transaction fees and gas prices get paid directly to the miners. So instead of like in Bitcoin, when the puzzle gets solved, the person that actually was running that node gets a certain number of Bitcoin as a reward. For Ethereum, the node runners get the gas prices and the transaction fees get paid directly to them. And these fees are scaled to the demand of the network. So if there is high demand on the network, then those fees go up. And the idea behind that is that when the fees go up, people will stop transacting on it, which will cause the demand to go down and the fees to go back down with it. This has recently been causing a lot of problems with Ethereum, in that the current gas fee is $9 like per operation for smart contracts. And also the average transaction fee right now, I think today was $24. Today being April 17th, 2021. Who knows what that's going to be next week or next year. Ethereum is working on different projects to kind of get these gas prices under control, because that's currently hurting the actual market for NFTs, and particularly in games when you're doing a high volume of transactions. So getting to the actual meat of this talk is fungible versus non-fungible tokens. So most of these tokens that I've been dealing with are on the Ethereum network. There are actual other blockchains out there that also do non-fungible tokens and smart contracts themselves. But Ethereum is the most popular one, the second most popular, right under Bitcoin. So these smart contracts are made to various standards. The first standard was what's called ERC20. ERC means Ethereum request for comment, and you can find all of the ERCs on the Ethereum.org website. I've linked a couple of them here. I'll also post these slides up as well on the meetup page once we get done here, just in case anyone wants to cross-reference some of these. But for ERC20s, those are just your standard fungible tokens. In Ethereum, there are, last I checked, over 350,000 ERC tokens. And these are just your kind of bog standard currencies that can be, subdivided into, I think it's like 10 to the 18th divisions. So you can't really do much with them aside from, trade them back and forth. Some have different utilities depending on which project they belong to. But for the most part, you'll just see them as tokens just on Etherscan. The ERC 721s are non-fungible. So these are just whole coins that can't be subdivided, and each one is meant to be wholly unique. Each token has its own smart contract on the Ethereum network. So what that means is if you have like an art piece or something as a 721 token, then there's only going to be one of those. It would be possible to have multiple non-fungible tokens if you have, say, you name each one with like an index. So if you have like one of 100 of these tokens, each one would be, all of those would be on the same smart contract, but they'll be individually labeled as different indexes. So they are still unique with their own metadata and whatnot to it. And most recently, I think I guess it was 2 years ago, the company Enjin created a new standard called 1155. And what the 1155 standard, it is a multi-token standard. So what that means is that you can have multiple tokens on a single smart contract. And this means that you can not only have multiple tokens for like your game or whatnot, you can also send them as batch transactions across in a single transaction. You can send multiple tokens. So with like 721, you can only send one token at a time. So if you are creating, say, 100 of these 721 tokens, like we said before, Ethereum transactions are about, 30 per second or whatever, or about 5 minutes for each transaction. If you're making 100 of them, that's 500 minutes you have to wait in order to actually create them and get them sent to their respective wallets. Also for 1155, the metadata for that token is not built into the actual blockchain. What you actually bake into the blockchain is just a URL to some metadata. And I'll show you in a second that the metadata is like a JSON blob, basically, that has additional information to it. So that can be like an image, that can be a song, that can just be actual game data for like levels and, stats and whatnot. And that also means that you can do things like localization. So that metadata can be in multiple different languages, which is something that 721 can't do. All right, so let's talk about Enjin itself. Here. So this is the actual Enjin platform, and this is one of the projects that I made. It is just essentially project name and a description that is linked to a wallet that I have set up, and you have an API. We'll go into the GraphQL API that this uses here in just a moment here. And we've got a app ID and an app secret. And I made some assets here ahead of time, and I'll show you what that actually looks like in the wallet as well. But some important parts here. So when you create an actual asset, this is done through Enjin's own 1155 contract on Ethereum right now. And I say right now because they are actually working towards going into moving off of a proof of work Ethereum onto a proof of stake network called Polkadot, I believe. That is it's a whole different ball of wax, but there are changes going on in Ethereum right now, and also with Enjin. But that's for another topic. So as we create an asset here, we can give it an asset type. So it can be either a fungible token or a non-fungible token. The fungible tokens on Enjin, they are interchangeable, just like a Bitcoin or like a dollar bill or whatever, but they can't be subdivided. So when you make a fungible token here, the lowest quantity you can have is 1. So you can't just make, if I made for my MGD gold here, it is fungible, but I can't have like half a gold. So that's something that you'll want to keep in mind as you're making like your game economy and whatnot. So either fungible or non-fungible, there is a supply model here. And the supply model, there's 3. There's a fixed supply, collapsing, and infinite. The fixed supply means that there will never be more than the max total supply. One thing that we'll get into here in a second is that to make a Enjin NFT, you have to put in a certain amount of actual Enjin token into it. That gives your tokens a intrinsic value to it. So if you buy one from the marketplace or wherever you get it from in game, even if that game shuts down and the items are ostensibly useless and like no one else is using it or anything like that, you can always melt down your token back into its Enjin coin. So right now, I think Enjin is at like $3, hovering about there. So we'll show you the marketplace here when I get done with this. And yeah. So the collapsing supply model, that means that the maximum total supply will actually decrease anytime a token is melted. So if you make 5 of like the epic sword of awesomeness, if somebody melts that one of those swords, then there's only ever going to be 4 in the world ever, and you can't make more to get back up to 5. And then what most of your tokens will probably end up being is the infinite supply model. So that means you'll always be able to make more. So this will be like the gold in your game, or the common items, even some of the uncommon items. There's probably going to be an infinite amount of those. So you'll always be able to make more when new players come on board. And here is the Enjin value per asset here. So I think the minimum you can actually put in, it actually depends on how many you are actually making here. So if I were to make, we'll make a sword of awesome. Here, and if I make 50 of them, and also the neat thing here, it'll tell me if it's too small. The neat thing here is that since you're supplying the actual Enjin coin to produce these NFTs, if a user decides to melt your asset, you can get some of that Enjin back to you, so it's not a complete loss on your end, which is good, because as Enjin prices goes up, then this will cost you a lot more to actually make these items, which is one of the downsides. You need a lot of cash up front in order to make a starting supply here. And I think it can be 0 all the way up to, I believe, 50%. Yeah. And our starting supply here, we can always make it 50. So as you see here, for 50 of our starting supply, you need to have at least this 0.01 for 142 Enjin or more. So if we do 0.015, that'll work. And then to make this 50 starting supply, we'll need to give it 0.75 Enj. You'll see that this is K-Enj instead of regular Enj, because we're on their Kovan test network. So none of this stuff is actually costing me like actual money right now. And so making a item transferable, you can also make it temporarily transferable or bound to the account. So say you're only making one of these things. Maybe it's for an achievement system. So for your world first raid kills, you can create an asset for that and then give it out to whichever guild or group or whatever manages to achieve that world first kill, and it's bound to that address. So once they have it, it's always theirs. They can't sell it or trade it or whatever. And there's also a transfer fee as well. So in addition to having return on your melt fees, you can also have like built-in royalties here. So every time that your item is traded, you'll get a cut of that. So it can either be per transaction, per item, a ratio cut, or a ratio extra. The ratio cut you get like, say, that 3% of the transaction will just go to you. The ratio extra would be like a 3% extra fee for the transaction that will actually go to you. Because once the token is actually in the user's wallets, you actually don't have any control over what they do with said assets. So you as a gamer, as a user of these items, you have complete control over this. So we can just create this now. We can make it with a per item. Now also, what you can do is you don't have to use Enjin for your transfer fee. You can use whatever ERC20 token you want. So you can create your own token and then use that for your token fee instead of actual Enjin. And we can make it a cut. And then the cut would be whatever, 5. The other thing is that in order to create and actually manage all of your items, what you'll need to do is set up a wallet. And I have a wallet set up here, and that has to be approved, and it should already. Anyways, so this wallet here is linked to, got a wallet set up here. So this is the actual Enjin wallet running. This is running on BlueStacks on my computer right now. And in this wallet, I have a couple of what you have in your wallet is any coins that you own. This just has the Kovan Enjin and the Kovan ETH here as well. And these are assets that I transferred over to this earlier. Here, this is what the items actually look like in the wallet. And all of your transactions actually have to be approved by the wallet owner on both sides. So when you're sending an item or when you are receiving an item, you'll get a notification here under requests that you are either getting an item or you are sending an item. There is a separate program that Enjin supplies you for game development purposes, that you can have a wallet running as a process on another server or on your own machine that will automatically approve any transactions on your behalf. So you don't have to constantly go to your wallet, approve a transaction, put in your password and all of that. And I have that running here right now in PowerShell. And I'm not sure why that did not let me create that. Let's see if it went to, nope, didn't go to the other wallet either. Weird. Anyways. Let's see if we can try this again. Non-fungible, fixed. We'll make it infinite. When you make it infinite, the maximum supply will also be infinite as well. And as you make more of the starting supply, the actual amount per engine is actually less as well. And I think this is the actual smallest amount you can put on there. Well, I don't have enough for that. I don't want to put that many on. So we'll get a 0.032. Okay. Transfer fee. I see. That is because I just need to go in and approve this account for its wallet, but I'll do that later. Okay. So let's pretend that we made that, and back in our assets here, so this is one I made a while back, I think last year sometime. So your item name and your description here, these can actually be changed at any time after you create your actual asset. So if for whatever reason you do like an art upgrade or something, or even you just decide to get rid of an item altogether, for like balance reasons or whatnot, you can just you can change the name, you can change the description, you can change the image to something, invalid or whatever. When you change these asset items or these names or descriptions, it doesn't take place instantly. It does take a few hours for that change to actually propagate out to the network. So this is the actual URI for the metadata for this actual token. What this contains is actually the item name, the image, and the description, and any other additional properties that might be unique to your game would be here. So if you were to actually change this JSON file wherever it's hosted, it needs to be hosted somewhere that is publicly available. So you could use, say, IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, which is an actual file hosting service that actually is on the blockchain. You can use that to actually store your JSON file. When you change that, that gets updated pretty much instantly, because you're just pulling down that JSON file and not having to worry about whatever is on the actual blockchain. As long as the file name itself doesn't change, this string here won't change. The other thing is, with the 1155 standard, you have this ID replacement here. So every item has a unique ID from, I don't know if you can see it in the editor, you can't, but this specific sword has its own unique item ID, and that item ID will get translated in here as its own JSON file. So if you're storing this on your AWS server or whatever, you'll have a whole list of all of these JSON files that you can go in and modify as you will. So after you've created your item and given it out to your players and whatnot, here's actually... Yes. Okay, so this is my actual Daemon Wallet here, and this is what would have our like all the items for our game that I can give out to players would be listed in this wallet here. And whenever a player earned gold or found a Vorpal blade or whatever, what I would do in your game is you would send a request to the your dev account. Your daemon will send this item to that specific player's wallet, and the daemon running on your computer, it will actually approve and send said transaction without your intervention here. And once a player has once a player has an item in their wallet, you technically don't have to use the Enjin wallet. Basically, any wallet should support the 1155 standard and can, send and receive these items just fine. What you might not have in different wallets would be the ability to see some of these advanced properties here. I don't have any actually written on for this one, but we'll look at the actual marketplace and I'll show you how that actually looks there. The other thing that NFTs will actually give you is a history, which is actually kind of cool in that even if this sword is the exact same as 8 other swords out there, this sword might have been used by a famous player, by a streamer or whatever. So you could have a sword that was used, by Ninja or whatever, during a world first boss kill or whatever. That history is tied to that specific token. And, even if everything else is the same, the item's history will be different. And that will be valuable to some number of people here. All right. So speaking of being valuable, so this is the actual marketplace here for Enjin. This is their mainnet marketplace. And these are some of the items that are being bought and sold for various different games out there. Most of these items are actually for a game called Lost Relics, which is kind of a top-down Diablo clone, basically an action RPG. And these are some of the items that you can find. Now, due to like the gas prices and transaction fees and whatnot, the only items in that game on the blockchain would be the legendary and above rarities. So you have for Lost Relics, it's like legendary, transcendent, mythical, and I believe just those 3 in epic. So say we have this axe, the dividing supremacy. This is being sold right now for 620 Enj, which is a little bit over $1,800. This is its description, and you also see these properties here. These properties are part of the metadata, which is part of that JSON blob I was talking about here. For its reserve, they only put in 0.8 Enj on this 2 years ago. You see the created date. 2 years ago, I think Enj was like at 20 cents. So it was a different time then. So there are the transfer fees here is 4 Enj per asset transferred. That is also somewhat unfortunate. You can't change this. Like I said, 2 years ago, Enj was a very different price. So they might not have put in 4 Enj for a transfer fee if they were $3. So that's, $12 or whatever just to actually transfer this item. That may or not be worth any more than, $2 some cents. You can see here who is actually holding it right now. You can see how many people actually have it, how many times this item has been transferred between players, and also how many melts there have been. Most items aren't ever going to be melted. because the price of the Enj that they put in there is probably not going to be as much as how much it is actually worth. So the really cool thing about Enjin specifically is that these properties are all public. So if somebody were to come into my game, I can look at their Ethereum wallet and see that they are holding this divine supremacy axe. And I can tell by its metadata that it is a mythical two-handed axe with some unknown item effects. Now, the problem is that there aren't any standards for what these properties can actually be. So if we were to look at, say, this forge hammer, the only properties on it is that it is usable in these number of games. So that doesn't give me a whole lot to go on if somebody comes into my game with this forge hammer. All I really know is that it is a forge hammer and it is usable in these some other games. What I could do is say you could spawn this as any old hammer in your game. If you want to go in and manually create a forge hammer, you could do that. But you're not going to do that you're not going to manually go in and create different assets for, any random thing that a player can put in. But the point being that you can at least acknowledge that they have this forge hammer that is part of this multiverse project. If we look at Age of Rust here, this one has it looks like basically game specific properties here. So this is like it unlocks, secret mission 1, whatever that means. There's also some card text variable and a black market. This is basically only useful for this game, Age of Rust. But you could, in theory, that could unlock a mission, in your game. Also, this thing is going for $13,000. Just, So we can look at other items here. I think the monolith here is probably the most single expensive item on the marketplace right now. If we looked at 3 years ago, Enjin created this and they put in 1 million Enj into this item. There's only one, and I think you can actually see who actually owns it. But if somebody were to take this, it's a collapsing supply. So if someone were to take this item and melt it down, they would have $3 million odd in Enjin. But this token would be gone, even though it is a fungible token. There's only one, and it's a collapsing supply. I think the horn might be not quite. Nope, I was mistaken. Somebody made an even bigger one called Diamond Hands about 2 months ago. Huh. Anyways, that one has 3 million Enj. I don't know where even they got that from. So yeah, that is it in a nutshell. We can go over the actual Unity SDK here. But first, let's talk about the actual GraphQL API. That is actually how you are going to be interacting with the actual Enjin platform. So we can look here. The GraphQL is basically a query language that is kind of, the language itself is kind of JSON-like, and it returns JSON as its results. So you can do things like you can grab all of the identities, the characters, the users in your game. They all have entities, and each entity is tied to a single Ethereum wallet. So you can think of your entities as your characters or your user accounts, and each account has its own wallet. Each wallet has a number of tokens in them. We can see here in the docs here, this will tell you all of your queries, which are read operations. So you can look up your balances, your identities, individual tokens or multiple tokens, and your different users. You can just look those up. You can even look up gas prices, what they currently are. And also mutations. So mutations are your write operations. So these are your, you can create users. When a user first signs up, you'd want to create a user account and an identity for them. So each user can have multiple identities for their different games. You can also update an identity. If somebody wants to link a different wallet, you can unlink and then link different wallets. There is a link code that you can go into in the Enjin app. You can link projects. So when you link a project, you can either scan a QR code or you can input a actual link code. The other thing you can do here is you can actually invalidate a token metadata, and that will force the system to re-download and update its own metadata. So if you make a change, you'd want to send this token invalidate message to force it to update, and it'll update a little bit quicker. So again here, this is a get balance query. So what we do is we send Enjin balances function here, this app ID. This is the app ID that we had in the platform site here, our app ID. And then this will give us all of the tokens that is in that application. So this would be like your entire item database. So down here below, this is actually what we want to return here. So what I asked for is a list of all of the balances for this token, for all tokens, their ID, their index, the name, and actually the value, which I think is how many there are. Yeah. So the powerful thing about GraphQL here is that I can just change this request, and I don't have to overfetch. So there's a lot of the actual Enjin token here has a lot of actual data that you could get for it. But because I'm not interested in, the melt fee ratio or even the reserve or whatever for it, or even its metadata, I don't care about it. I don't have to actually pull that from the database, from the blockchain. So this means that you're actually using less data if you're on mobile, and also just not having to, store all that data anywhere or just ignore it or whatnot. So if I do want, say, the token's name and its icon, I can just ask for it. And I'm unauthenticated because I forgot to log in. There we go. So now I have its ID, index, name, and an icon. So in your game, you can grab this URL and then fetch this image and then display it to the user, no matter what it is. Even if it's not my item, I can look in their wallet here. I can give it their user ID, look in their wallet, and then I could display whatever items that they have in their wallet to them. This, if you have a item token name that you want to look up, like say you look in their wallet and you see they have the monolith. I wonder if that shows up on Kovan. And you want to know what the heck this thing is. All you need is the actual token name, and then you can get all of this information from it. You can get the item URI, which is this JSON file. You can look up, which I don't think there's much actually on it. Yeah, it doesn't have any properties. Let's look up. Yeah, we can just look up the dividing supremacy here. It did not like that. Bah. So we can. So this is actually what was on the Kovan network. This one doesn't actually have, well, we can see what this is. Okay, cool. let's see if we can put it, can we parse this a little bit? No. Okay. We'll try this. All right. Here. All right, so this is the Json Viewer. So this is what will come up when you say do a GET request for this this URL. It will show up, and you can just parse this with, you know, Newton JSON or whatever in your actual code, and then kind of do with it what you will. So again, we see that it is, you know, unknown effect, two-handed axe, and we see that it is mythical, whatever that means. That might mean something different for your game than it does for Lost Relics. Now, the other kind of the most important thing that you can do here is a trade request. So what this does here, this create Enjin request, if we look here in the docs, create Enjin identity request, create Enjin request here. So this gives us a lot of actual parameters that we can send it. What we will actually need is the identity of the actual initiator of the request. If it's your game, the actual like server initiating the request, like if they have a loot drop or whatever, that will be your actual game identity. The admin identity will be this. There are a number of type of requests. I don't know if that shows up, but yeah, the type of request is a enum that I don't know is listed anywhere. There is a number of them. But I can't find where they are. So this one is a create trade. And then we have another struct here for create trade data. So this is asking tokens. So this is what you want to get out of it, which might be nothing. If you leave that ID as 0, then this will be, that's the ID for actual Enjin token. And then the offering token, which can also be 0 as well. And then also the second party, and this is who you're actually asking it of. And then for this request, it'll also return the ID of the request, the data, and the state of said address. I wonder if this will... Nope. All right. And that's kind of the basics of the GraphQL. Next, let's go ahead and hop into Unity real quick. There is a Enjin SDK on the asset store, but it is currently super bare bones, and they told us that they're in the process of reworking it. So at the moment, all I've got set up right now is just basically logging in with the app ID, creating a user, and getting the actual balance here. And right now, here, so the only things that you'll need beforehand is your app ID and your app secret. Those are all on the, nope, not that. Here we go. Here in your settings. So in your project settings, your API credentials, your app ID, and your app secret. It goes without saying, don't lose your app secret. Don't stream it online like I'm doing. If somebody has your app secret, they have your app. I also have a admin username right now just for, I think this is before I had the actual daemon set up. So, and our wallet, okay. So let's look at App Manager here. So the App Manager, what you'll need is you need using, this is part of the SDK, the Enjin SDK data types. That will be your data types for like your user, your wallet, your identities and whatnot. That's mainly just for deserializing that JSON that you get returned to from your GraphQL calls. Basically, all this SDK is just a C# wrapper around the GraphQL calls. The calls themselves are literally strings that you're sending via Unity web requests. So this, yeah. So the first thing we're doing here, aside from setting up logging, is we are going to be registering this login event. So for the various states of logging in, once we actually get logged in with our app API ID and secret key, will be a login state of valid, and that means you know that you're connected, and then you can register your user and whatnot. Most of this is just kind of boilerplate logging code here, so we know what's going on. The actual first thing that happens is you'll just call Enjin.startPlatform. And this should be done on your server side. You shouldn't be doing this on your clients because you don't want to give your clients your app ID and your secret key. So this should be running on whatever dedicated server that the rest of your game is actually running on. This should be on that side of things. So yeah, we basically try to start it. We will wait until it is actually connected. And then that's kind of it for the manager. In our UI, yeah, we are basically just telling it which networks to actually connect to. We have the Kovan test network and the actual mainnet that costs like real money to actually use. I suggest you get super familiar with everything in Kovan first before you go live. And depending on your game, you might want to stick with Kovan until some more changes come about that will lower your transaction and gas fees and all that. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like in action here. Okay. So the first thing I do here is connect to the network, and then I give it a username. This is one that I've already created. So I'll just go ahead and log in, but it did not. There we go. So I got logged in. I'm not sure why this is still null. That shouldn't be. Anyways, I'll check that out later. So I logged in with my username. You'll notice that I didn't give it a password or anything. Like I said, this should mostly be done on your server side. So your users should already be authenticated through whatever game server you're actually using. I'm planning on using Firebase myself for user authentication. That way you can save your user's name, their Enjin IDs, and wallets and all of that. You can just save that on your own database, because most of the time those should not be changing. So I didn't hook that one up yet. You can see here in the inspector, when I logged in, this gave me like my user ID, my name. This is the JSON that the query actually returned to me. And this gets here in the manager. This gets saved out as a user, current user, here. And this is a public user. This is the SDK data type user. So this is the Unity user. And this is the current user that is logged in. And here in its identities, it is grabbing the last time it was updated, when it was created. It should be. Those might be in weird data types. But the actual ID here is its identity. I could have multiple identities here. I just created this user, so it only has one. So you get the app. I think I'm only getting the ID here, the app ID. You could get its name and description and image if you want to show like the various games that users are actually logged into. You get its user. I'm not getting that. And I am getting the wallet. And so this is the actual wallet address that is tied to my user. And from there, I can actually get the balances, but I don't think I'm actually grabbing them from this particular query. We can look at how the queries are actually done here. Here in, where is it? I don't think I'm actually using this right now. Nope, not yet. So what we can look at, it's in the UI manager here. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There's the Get platform. Here is Get user. Yoink. All right, so we can actually look at Get user, and it is going to be getting Get user ID. Here in users ID. So what this is doing is calling GraphQuery a post, which is literally just a web request, and it is going to be sending it this user template, get user for ID. So when I said this was bare bones, this is what I'm referring to. This is basically, where's template? It's in resources, templates, user templates, yes. So this is just a text file with those same GraphQL queries that you saw in the GraphQL playground. They're just text files, and it's just a string, and it's just a string of that query. So what we're doing here is we're calling get user for ID. We're sending it this query. What we're getting back is the ID, which is the name, the identities, the identity ID, the app ID, the linking code. If your player has not already linked their wallet to their identity, this will come back as not null. So you'll have either a code to type in or a QR code that you can display that you can scan from the actual app. We get their wallet, which is their ETH address, and where it's updated and created. These are all just hard-coded. So if you wanted to get more information from the user or their ID, or you can actually get their tokens from the wallet, you would have to actually modify this actual file here. And you basically have to do it manually. There are other ways to do this. You can build it in C#. There's a couple of C# libraries for GraphQL that will let you build these queries in code for you. They did tell us that the SDK was getting reworked, as well as some of the GraphQL calls here, but we don't have an actual date for any of those. They are also, speaking of like updates and whatnot, they are also going to be, they're in the process of releasing what they call the JumpNet. And JumpNet is going to be a private side chain to Ethereum while they make their big move into what they call Efinity, their Efinity network, which is going to be on the Polkadot network, which is a separate blockchain from Ethereum, which will allow them to do better scaling and kind of do away with all of the fees and gas prices and whatnot. With their JumpNet that is currently private right now, we're waiting on them to go public, should be any time now. Once that goes public, that'll be on a side chain. So it'll be different from the Kovan and the current mainnet. There'll also be a JumpNet. And since that's a side chain, It is private. I believe it's also proof of authority. So because it's private, you don't have to worry about the gas fees or the transfer fees. They'll be processing those transactions themselves, and so they won't actually charge you anything for it. The only thing you have to do is supply your NFTs with Enj from the mainnet, and that's all you need to worry about. So getting your engine onto the jump net will require a Ethereum gas fee, but that's basically a one-time fee. Moving it back onto the mainnet will also be a fee. So say you want to move your nope. Where was it? Here. You want to move your dividing supremacy back off of JumpNet and sell it onto, OpenSeas or whatever. That would also be a Ethereum transaction for now. Once everything moves over to Efinity on the Polkadot network, that won't be an issue anymore. So yeah, that's really about it for reals this time. I did want to kind of shout out some of the actual use cases here. And Minecraft has actually used a couple of the Enjin NFTs for their, I wonder if we can search for them. There's a couple of swords that is used in multiple other games as well. They're using this for their Azure badges. So think of these as kind of achievements for attending different Azure like learning events and stuff, like for conferences. So if you attend a certain Azure talk for, say, like the build conference or whatever, they'll give you a little Badger NFT. There are Lost Relics is one that we looked at already, and here, and also Age of Rust is a big one. I think it's still in early access. I'm pretty sure Age of Rust is getting released on Steam soonish. Oh yeah, so this is one of the options here for when you are getting rid of a token. Basically, you can change its name, you can change its icon, and you can change its description to just say like, hey, this thing is not being used anymore, feel free to melt it. As you can see, Lost Relics is one of the more popular blockchain games out there right now. There's also Six Dragons, which is actually a pretty interesting case here. No, that's not Six Dragons. I'm thinking of, there's another one called Nine Lives. That is a arena battler game, and after your character dies 9 times, you actually have permadeath there. So they will actually, that character will no longer be able to be used, but it does get like an in-game statue. Yeah. Altraverse is one as well that I think is a 4X game, I think. Do they have an actual... I want to say this one was the 4X game. Nope, I have no idea what this game is. Huh, cool. Anyways. So yeah, it's not all just like mobile games and whatnot. To check that one out. Yeah, so that's basically it. Anybody online there have any questions or anything about that? I know we went over quite a bit. I'll also have this posted up on YouTube here in the next 24 hours. And I'll leave a link to these slides there in the description as well. No worries. But yeah, I started playing Lost Relics last week, but I haven't gotten anything cool yet. Especially not this thing that's $5,000. Yep. Not necessarily this specific one, but this token itself. This one's 14,000. What the hell? Anyways, we'll go ahead and I'll wrap it up there and stop streaming. All right, so like I said, drop a question in the comments if you guys have any questions, or join us on our Discord.